All right. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get this little update started. This is an update on the current wildfire situation across California and the multi-county coordinated effort that's being done here at the State Operations Center and throughout all the counties with the incident management teams and all of our responders. Before I start off, I just, since our last briefing, I think I mentioned to you, unfortunately, the auto accident that the Galt police officers were in responding to the Caldor fire. Unfortunately, since then, we've learned that Harminder Singh Grewal, which one of the officers in the vehicle has passed, and so our thoughts and condolences are with the family and friends of his family and the Galt police officer, Galt Police Department at all. It's unfortunate, and we feel real concern for their whole department. We also want to express our thoughts and sorrows for the loss of all the individuals in the state are enduring in these fires and what everyone is going through. We know it isn't easy, and we're doing everything we can to mitigate the fires as fast as we possibly can. Chief Porter and Chief Sergeant Gardina will cover the fire-specific operations. I will just say that, as you know, there's been a lot of issues related to the evacuations in South Lake Tahoe. I will say that we've been working closely here at the State Operations Center with El Dorado County, the city of South Lake Tahoe, and the incident management team on proactively planning for a safe and orderly evacuation of South Lake Tahoe. The evacuation order is now in place for South Lake Tahoe, which also extends up into Kirkwood, which is part of the Alpine County. It's important to follow all the local authorities' issuance of evacuation information as the conditions change rapidly. Although in the planning effort over the course of the last several days, there have been a number of evacuation warnings, and information is being pushed out leading up to today's evacuation order. And there's been a tremendous amount of work over the weekend with all of the different local, state, and federal partners working in the South Lake Tahoe area, going out and knocking on doors, making sure that all of those folks knew if they needed to evacuate, they could. That included evacuating the jail in South Lake Tahoe. It included evacuating Barton Hospital in South Lake Tahoe, and it included making sure that individuals who had any access and functional needs issues had all of the transportation or all those assets that were required to be able to get them out in a timely and organized fashion. It's important to note that to get evacuation information, we are asking residents of El Dorado County to sign up for Code Red. That is their electronic information dissemination capability. It's how they do their emergency notifications specific to El Dorado County. It will alert residents and businesses by telephone, cell phone, text messages, email, and social media when there's a threat and there's any other new information coming across. So that's Code Red, and you can go online and in El Dorado County and sign up for that. You can also go to the Cal OES website and pull up alert orders and click on that and go find El Dorado County and connect in with the Code Red as well. Also, since our last briefing, we had asked, the governor had asked the president for a presidential major disaster declaration. The White House did approve that major disaster declaration, actually within 24 hours after the governor had submitted it. Andrew Grant, the federal coordinating officer appointed by FEMA, is here today. He'll talk a little bit about that. This federal support will really help impacted counties in Lassen, Nevada, Placer, and Plumas counties at this point. We also have states of emergency, and under the states of emergency through the California Disaster Assistance Act for El Dorado and the Caldor fire and a few of the other counties that aren't under federal declaration but are seeking and are getting state assistance. And so we'll hear more about that from Andrew in a few minutes. We know these are difficult times, and we continue to be all hands on deck. We're moving every resource we can within the state to support the fires. We currently have more than 15,000 personnel working on fires throughout the state. That includes nearly 1,200 fire engines, 315 hand crews, 367 bulldozer units, 411 water tenders, and 111 helicopters. Our robust mutual aid system, supported by local government fire agencies and allied agencies across the state, continues to bolster this firefighting effort with over 470 engines from within that system committed. In addition, we continue to have out-of-state resources from Utah and Washington, Wisconsin, and West Virginia. And we did have crews here from Louisiana, which had to cut loose to go back to Hurricane Ida, which is another major, obviously, catastrophic event that's taking place in the country, and is a pull on resources from throughout the United States, including our federal partners at the Forest Service and at FEMA. And we're providing resources now to more than 43,400 Californians who are under evacuation. More than 650 are housed in 15 congregate and non-congregate shelters being coordinated by the Department of Social Services here at the state, and along with the Red Cross, and then our county partners throughout the state that are working at the county level in being able to support that. We also are coordinating very closely with our partners at the state of Nevada, the Nevada Emergency Management Agency for cross-border evacuations at state line in Nevada, in South Lake Tahoe, with regards to individuals that are moving out of South Lake Tahoe and moving into and may need congregate or non-congregate sheltering on the Nevada side. And as I mentioned, that is ongoing as we speak, and we know that there is a pretty big group of people are moving out currently the South Lake Tahoe area. All of this, of course, is a reminder that it's very critical to be prepared and alert here. We are still at the beginning of our fire season, and we know that this past weekend we were breaking fires throughout the state, and the fire assets that responded to those are CAL FIRE and the Forest Service and our local governments. The initial attack, they did a great job trying to keep most of those fires small and getting them out rapidly. Very important that you learn the difference between evacuation order and evacuation warning. An evacuation warning means there's an impending danger to life or property. If a warning is given, assume that evacuation order will probably follow at some time, so we want you to pay close attention to that. An evacuation order means that there's an imminent threat, and we want you to leave the area immediately. If given an evacuation order, as we've said many times, don't wait, evacuate. It is your life, and we want to get you out of harm's way. It also allows firefighters and other law enforcement personnel, law enforcement mutual aid, et cetera, to be able to get into the area and get the job done. And then, again, sign up for those alerts, as I mentioned earlier. You can visit calalerts.org, calalerts.org, to be able to pull down information on that. If you have been evacuated or have lost your home, please follow Cal OES or your county for updates on how to apply for assistance. But most importantly, you should be reaching out to your insurance companies now, if you have insurance, talking to your insurance providers to be able to begin that process. That's the first line in being able to get government assistance. We know that a lot of work lies ahead, but this continues to be truly a one team, one fight effort. And I want to thank all of the folks who are working here, all the folks that have been working in the field. We have a lot of very dedicated, hardworking, very tired firefighters and law enforcement personnel and support personnel, public, private, and non-governmental, all working together to try to mitigate these fires. And so we'll now know and learn more from Chief Porter and Chief Scardina from the Forest Service. I'll turn it over now to Chief Porter for the fire update. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Director Ghilarducci. Again, Tom Porter, Director, CAL FIRE. And what I'm going to focus on today is kind of the big picture in California and what things look like overall. First and foremost, thank you to all of the mutual aid response, local government for sure, absolutely critical to all of these fires and all of the firefight, but our federal partners for really stepping up and moving resources into the region, and then all of the CAL FIRE units from throughout the state moving resources to the needs at hand. It's one team, one fight. We're all in this together. while a lot of these are on other jurisdictions, we're all fighting these fires as if they are one fight for California, and that is an incredible thing that California does each and every year, and particularly here we are in August yet again. So in the north part of the state, we've been talking about a lot of fires that are still burning in the north part of the state, the River Complex, the Antelope, the McFarland and Monument fires in particular. There are new fires that are cropping up in those areas, McCash and Knob fires. All of these fires in the north part of the state are ones that we have resources on and we're fighting, but we're also knowing that those are less concerning to lives and property right now than other fires. So they are looking much better. We are watching the weather and watching how they react in the weather, but those fires are pretty much doing what they're going to do for this point in time. Circle down to Southern California. Southern California in particular, over the weekend in San Diego County, we had a really touchy fire, the Chaparral fire. Chaparral fire is burning right on the border between San Diego, Orange County, and Riverside County. Real tight little spot, look pretty remote for those counties. Great stop. Stopped it at 1,500 acres. Probably by the end of the day today, we'll see evacuation orders lifted in the communities of Duluth and those areas outside of Temecula. Really good stop. Can't emphasize it enough that we are still meeting our responsibility to get fires put out at the smallest possible size during initial attack and that early extended attack so we can continue the fight on these bigger fires. The rest of the fires in the south are Arola, the French, we're doing really well there. So I want everyone to know we're taking care of the rest of the state as well. Coming back to the critical fires, the Dixie. Dixie is still the second largest fire in California's history. It is the 14th most damaging fire in California's history. And we are continuing to fight that in two fronts. One up in the north, the Lassen National Park, as it moves into parts further north from there. A lot of effort being undertaken there, and then down toward Quincy on the south end, east of Quincy, Genesee Valley, a lot of work and good work being done there. So then we come to the Caldor. Caldor is a real tough one for us. It's been burning in heavy timber in Deep Canyon Gorge of the Highway 50 corridor between South Lake Tahoe and Sacramento. And very difficult terrain as well as conditions to fight fire. On the west end of that fire, Sly Park, Grizzly Flat, which was significantly damaged in the first days of this fire, that area is starting to get some control. And so we're starting to feel better on that west side, which is important in case we get a north or east wind event. That fire pushing back out and then into communities closer to the valley floor and then getting into more of the populated area in the state responsibility. Now that doesn't translate exactly the same for the east side of the fire. The east side of the fire, difficult road conditions, hard to access. It's been burning in heavy timber, just very, very difficult conditions. We've been making headway at times. I reported last week about how we have effectively an inversion that puts a kind of a lid on fire activity. But then when air clears, it's like taking the lid off of your pot of boiling water. All of a sudden there's that plume of heat and steam that comes out. Same thing happens on a fire. Also sucks in oxygen from all directions, puts fire and spot fires in all directions. That's what happened yesterday. 20,000 acre plus run yesterday. Massive growth for that fire. Not the biggest growth of its life, but it was the biggest in the last week and a half. And it unfortunately grew toward South Lake Tahoe further up canyon. Twin Bridges. It burned into Sierra Tahoe, the ski area, and beyond that. So Now the fire is hung up on that ridge above where it would drop into the basin. We have spots down in and around Lower Echo Lake, also in Aloha Lake in the Desolation Wilderness. So there's fire in the basin. You might remember a couple of reports ago, we haven't had fires burn from one side of the Sierras to the other. We did with the Dixie, now we have with the Caldor. 2 times in our history, and they're both happening this month. So we need to be really cognizant that there is fire activity happening in California that we have never seen before. I've said it before, but the critical thing for you, the public, to know is evacuate early. Early. Warning. Warning doesn't mean you have to stick around and wait for the order. You can go during a warning. You can go if you're sucking smoke and you have respiratory or other underlying issues and you're in the smoke for days. You're not going to be out of the smoke for many more days, so find a way out. Go to clear air. Look out for your own health and safety. Allow for firefighters to do what they need to do without having to rescue you, without putting out fire as their main focus right now. We need people to leave, and we need you to leave early. In the basin, for the last week, we have been planning for, in coordination with Nevada, California, the Basin Management Unit, Region 4 from the Forest Service, Region 5 from the Forest Service, all coordinating plans to evacuate South Lake Tahoe. Those are happening today in a very orderly fashion. There is a method to the triggers that are being pulled and the timing for each of those. It's time to start going. For the rest of you in California, you've heard me say this before, every acre can and will burn someday in this state. Be ready now. Be ready now, before there's a warning. When there's a warning, you put everything in the car and you go, or you wait for the order and you go. Be ready now. With that, I'm going to pass the mic to Tony Scardina, Deputy Regional Forester for Region 5 here in California.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chief Porter. I'm just going to give some brief updates of so what's different from last week. What is the same is we continue to be at preparedness level 5 nationally. That's the highest fire preparedness level. That has not changed since July 14th. In the north half of California, we remain at PL 5 as well. And in the southern part of the state, we move from 3 to 4, meaning that we've seen some increased fire activity. You saw it on the Cleveland National Forest. You saw it down near the San Bernardino National Forest with the South Fire. As Chief Porter mentioned, we're happy that we were able to get containment on several of those, but we're starting to see that drying trend. And so as Southern California starts to come into play into September, one of those concerns when we talk about resources already being strained in the north part of the state and other parts of the country, when we add Southern California into that, that's where we have to remain vigilant in terms of our initial attack capability so we can stay aggressive there, and that message of communities being ready and prepared for that. There are 27,000 firefighters deployed throughout the United States at this point. Over 15,000 of those are in California. If that tells you the amount of resources we have that we are putting to these priority fires to try and fight them aggressively and suppress them. To date, 1.7 million acres have burned in California, and that is significant in terms of communities impacted and recovery we will have to do, so our hearts are really with impacted communities. And as Tom mentioned, just continued growth over the past 48 hours on several fires in Northern California. Conditions started to dry out a little bit, winds started to pick up a little bit, and we're going to see red flag conditions in the northern part of the state over the next 48 hours. So expect to see growth on these fires, and we are preparing for that as best we can. But same thing, when it gets hotter and drier, we're going to see more smoke in the air, and we want the public to be aware of what you're seeing and be prepared as your local counties and others communicate with you. We are getting ready to prep and activate 250 soldiers of active duty military They are getting ready to be trained and move into the northern part of the state as we did last year to support fires in California. And just really want to thank our partners with Department of Defense in bringing additional resources to really shore up some of our own folks that are on the ground. We've also activated two more C-130 aircraft with Department of Defense. They have a total of 8 that we refer to as MAFs. This is the first time since 2012 that all 8 of those have been activated when there was significant fire activity at the time in Colorado. As Tom mentioned, Caldor last night was very active. In one place, made a 7-mile run to the northeast of Highway 50, and another place made an 8.5-mile run. So that's the unprecedented fire behavior that Tom's referring to that we have not seen. And we're wanting to make sure that communities understand we are going to continue to manage in a coordinated and calm way, but we also need them to be ready. The first priority at this point is making sure people get out safely and we don't have loss of life. And that ready, set, go message, just be prepared. As Tom mentioned, you don't always have to wait for the evacuation order. If you get that warning, start to think about what's the right time for you and your family in that situation. And as I always do to close, I want to thank our firefighters, support personnel. I was out this week in one of our dispatch centers seeing what those emergency dispatchers do every day to respond to fires, make sure resources are where they need to be. It's a type of work that we don't often see because it's not on the fire line, but just really critical in what those people do together, and as well as with our partners. And that final message of one team, one fight, and we know we have months ahead of us potentially, and the confidence that we have is through our partnerships and that we will get through this together amongst the agencies that you see here and with the citizens of California. Thank you. And I'm now going to hand it over to Major General Baldwin with California National Guard.
Thanks, Tony. I'm Dave Baldwin with the Cal Guard. The Cal Guard has 1,059 soldiers, sailors, and airmen providing support to fire suppression operations. This support is a broad spectrum of military capability from space-based platforms down to boots on the ground, where we're providing fire suppression, incident awareness, and support to law enforcement. Today's newest mission is we're mobilizing 150 military police members to go support El Dorado County and the California Highway Patrol in conducting traffic control points and securing evacuated areas. Looking forward, we're going to facilitate and assist in the deployment of the active component hand crews that are coming from Fort Lewis, Washington over the next couple of days, in addition to mobilizing an additional force package of Cal Guard hand crew members. And then we are also postured and in contact with our partners from our states that are impacted by Hurricane Ida, and we're postured to deploy life-saving support or logistics support to those states from the Cal Guard if requested and necessary. And I'll be followed by Assistant Commissioner Ryan Okashima from the Highway Patrol.
Thank you, General Baldwin. Good afternoon, everyone. Safety continues to be the California Highway Patrol's first priority. We appreciate the ongoing partnership that we have, the collaborative effort that's been going on with all of our public safety partners that you see behind me right here. Thank you very much for those personnel, General Baldwin. We appreciate that assistance on those traffic control points. The California Highway Patrol continues to provide assistance with exactly that, traffic control points, evacuations when necessary to assist our allied law enforcement partners, and also with additional patrols to areas that have been evacuated so we can prevent looting that may be taking place. Additionally to that, the Caldor Fire specific, just last night, yesterday, we've added quite a bit of additional personnel to assist with those evacuations that are taking place today, currently as we speak. And our Valley Division Emergency Operations Center is fully operational as we speak as well. We've been talking about evacuations, the warnings, the order to evacuate. I want to talk a little bit about preparedness. I just would like to tell everybody, be prepared when you get that warning. Make sure your vehicles are completely fueled. You have your personal belongings that you want to take with you in your vehicle ready to go. You have your medications and some food and water, just in case those evacuations take a little bit more time due to congestion, evacuating the area. That will help us out tremendously. Also, please listen to CHP personnel, law enforcement personnel, when that order to evacuate is given, to ensure that you are ready to go and that you listen to the direction of law enforcement, National Guard potentially, as to which evacuation routes you're to take. And as we talk about evacuations, as I mentioned, they're ongoing right now. There are some traffic delays, but again, those warnings went out early enough and the evacuation orders have gone out early. We're working with our law enforcement partners. We're working with Caltrans. And again, we have a lot of additional CHP personnel in the area to direct those evacuations. And we're currently splitting those routes into two to kind of assist with that. Those kind of living in South Lake Tahoe, the city proper, are being told to evacuate eastbound on Highway 50, and then the rest northbound on Highway 89. And with that, I'm going to turn over to our FEMA Region 9 Coordinator, Andrew Grant. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Assistant Commissioner. I appreciate you and sharing what you're doing for law enforcement. I got to tell you, as a fellow Californian, it's really difficult to see the destruction, the challenges that these survivors are facing. But I also know that everyone here in this press conference and all of their teams are doing everything they can to provide assistance to get them out of harm's way. And it really is amazing to see, to be a part of that team. And again, as a fellow Californian, to see all the people that have come here to support them in their greatest time of need. So thank you very much, all of you. So just a couple things about the declaration, and I want to make sure that everyone understands that response being separate from recovery doesn't mean that we're going to move any more slowly. We just have to do it with some dexterity and understanding what those recovery needs are. The declaration's 4610, 4610. It covers 4 counties for 2 fires, Nevada and Placer for the River Fire, and Lassen and Plumas for the Dixie Fire, which is ongoing. And thinking about that Dixie Fire a little bit, here you heard the chief talking about the response operations and the firefighting that's still happening, and yet we are already up in Plumas and with Lassen and the other 2 counties, either on the ground, actually as recently as last week, the director and I, along with others, went and visited Greenville, as well as on the phone or communicating with them in a variety of ways to make sure the recovery work is already being done in those places. The declaration unfolds in terms of assistance to a couple areas for individual assistance. That's down to the survivor level. It can go to what's called ONA, which is other needs assistance. It can be things like transportation costs, all temporary funeral costs, if that's necessary, personal property, medical, dental. There's a variety of different personal temporary needs that we can provide monies to help people go through this difficult time. The other area of focus is housing assistance, all temporary assistance opportunities to enable people to pay for lodging or hoteling expenses. Other housing assistance can come in the form of rental assistance or even in some cases reconstruction costs as well as repairs for those that have primary and permanent residences in the 4 counties. So we do at the same time, while sharing what the program is about, want to make sure that everyone understands the importance of reaching out to your insurance companies or your agents and to get them on your case. And that is the primary form of how most people, if they have that insurance, can recover. However, if you're only partly covered by insurance, please reach out to us and we'll see if you're eligible for those forms of assistance. All that being said, there are really 4 ways, in my view, that you can receive that type of eligibility process to determine if you can receive assistance. The first is by calling 1-800-621-FEMA, 1-800-621-FEMA. The other is going online to disasterassistance.gov. A third way is through a web application that you can download, so you can use the app directly. And then also anyone who wears this out in the field will fully understand, listen to your case, fully understand how to direct you to those other places where you can start the registration process to see if you're eligible for assistance. You know, it goes without saying there's a lot of activity going on in California. We're going to stay laser focused on the declaration and those 4 counties and the work that we're doing there. And I'm very pleased to say that the recovery team that Cal OES has put together, as well as the team that we have in place, are ready to do that. Most recently, along with many members of the director's team, as well as on the FEMA side, we just finished through a very long-term recovery effort for the 2020 fires. And so a lot of that same expertise is turning directly back into this new declaration. and we're going to do everything we can to help the disaster survivors. Director?
Thanks, Andrew. And there'll be teams that are be going out to shelters and other places where survivors may be housed, and we'll be working with them face-to-face as well over the course of the next week or two. With that, I will be happy to direct or answer any questions anybody has. Do we have any questions today?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to turn the we got the general. I'm going to turn the podium over to General Frank McKenzie, Commander of U.S. Central Command. He'll have some opening comments, and then he'll take some questions. We do have a hard stop at 5 o'clock, so I will not waste up any more time. General, can you hear and see me okay?
Hey, John, I can hear and see you just fine. How many? Over.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for being here today, and I turn it over to you, sir.
Thanks, John. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to announce the completion of our withdrawal from Afghanistan and the end of the military mission to evacuate American citizens, third country nationals, and vulnerable Afghans. The last C-17 lifted off from Hamid Karzai International Airport on August 30th this afternoon at 3:29 p.m. East Coast time, and the last manned aircraft is now clearing the airspace above Afghanistan. We will soon release a photo of the last C-17 departing Afghanistan with Major General Chris Donahue and the U.S. Ambassador to Afghanistan, Ross Wilson, aboard. While the military evacuation is complete, the diplomatic mission to ensure additional U.S. citizens and eligible Afghans who want to leave continues. And I know that you have heard, and I know that you're going to hear more about that from the State Department shortly. Tonight's withdrawal signifies both the end of the military component of the evacuation, but also the end of the nearly 20-year mission that began in Afghanistan shortly after September 11th, 2001. It's a mission that brought Osama bin Laden to a just end, along with many of his al-Qaeda co-conspirators. And it was not a cheap mission. The cost was 2,461 U.S. service members and civilians killed, and more than 20,000 who were injured. Sadly, that includes 13 U.S. service members who were killed last week by an ISIS-K suicide bomber. We honor their sacrifice today as we remember their heroic accomplishments. No words from me could possibly capture the full measure of sacrifices and accomplishments of those who served, nor the emotions they're feeling at this moment. But I will say that I'm proud that both my son and I have been a part of it. Before I open it up for questions, I do want to provide some important context to the evacuation mission that we just completed, in what was the largest non-combatant evacuation in the U.S. military's history. Since August the 14th, over an 18-day period, U.S. military aircraft have evacuated more than 79,000 civilians from Hamid Karzai International Airport. That includes 6,000 Americans and more than 73,500 third country nationals and Afghan civilians. This last category includes special immigrant visas, consular staff, at-risk Afghans, and their families. In total, U.S. and coalition aircraft combined to evacuate more than 123,000 civilians, which were all enabled by U.S. military service members who were securing and operating the airfield. On average, we have evacuated more than 7,500 civilians per day over the 18 days of the mission, which includes 16 full days of evacuations, and more than 19,000 on a single day. These numbers do not include the roughly 5,000 service members and their equipment that were sent to Afghanistan to secure the airfield and who were withdrawn at the conclusion of our mission. The numbers I provided represent a monumental accomplishment, but they do not do justice to the determination, the grit, the flexibility, and the professionalism of the men and women of the U.S. military and our coalition partners who were able to rapidly combine efforts and evacuate so many under such difficult conditions. As such, I think it's important that I provide you with what I hope will be some valuable context. When the President directed the complete withdrawal of U.S. forces from Afghanistan in April, the team at U.S. Central Command began to update and refine our existing plan for a potential non-combatant evacuation operation, or NEO, in Afghanistan. We have a framework of plans that included numerous branches and sequels depending on the nature of the security environment. Over time, we continued to refine our plans, which included the interagency, the international community, and other combatant commands. Plans such as this are built upon a number of facts and assumptions, and facts and assumptions change over time. While observing the security environment deteriorate, we continue to update our facts and assumptions. As the security situation rapidly devolved in Afghanistan, we took a number of actions to position ourselves for a potential NEO, based upon direction from the Secretary of Defense. We positioned forces in the region and put them on increased alert. We began to pre-position supplies, and we began some preparatory work on intermediate facilities in Qatar with the support of our gracious host nation. When the evacuation was formally directed on August the 14th, we began to carry out our plan based upon the initial assumption that the Afghan security forces would be a willing and able security partner in Kabul, defending the capital for a matter of weeks or at least for a few days. Within 24 hours, of course, the Afghan military collapsed completely, opening Kabul up to the Taliban's advance. On August the 15th, in a meeting with Taliban senior leadership in Doha, I delivered a message on behalf of the President that our mission in Kabul was now the evacuation of Americans and our partners, that we would not tolerate interference, and that we would forcefully defend our forces and the evacuees if necessary. The Taliban's response in that meeting was in line with what they've said publicly. While they stated their intent to enter and occupy Kabul, they also offered to work with us on a deconfliction mechanism to prevent miscalculation while our forces operated in close quarters. Finally, they promised not to interfere with our withdrawal. It's important to understand that within 48 hours of the NEO execution order, the facts on the ground had changed significantly. We had gone from cooperating on security with a longtime partner and ally to initiating a pragmatic relationship of necessity with a longtime enemy. Into that environment, Rear Admiral Pete Vaisley and Brigadier General Farrell Sullivan of the Marines, and subsequently Major General Chris Donahue of the Army's 82nd Airborne Division, deployed and employed their forces and did extraordinary work with the leading elements of our reinforcement package to safely close the embassy in one period of darkness, or one evening, to establish a deconfliction mechanism with the Taliban, to establish security at the airport, and to bring in the rest of our reinforcements into the airport. They accomplished this difficult list of tasks within 48 hours of supporting the transfer of the embassy to the airport. I visited Kabul on Tuesday, August the 17th, to see the work being done to establish security firsthand and to observe the transition to the evacuation. I left on a C-17 that brought more than 130 Afghans and American citizens out from Karzai International Airport to Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. Our men and women on the ground at the airport quickly embraced the dangerous and methodical work of defending the airport while conducting the hand-to-hand screening of more than 120,000 evacuees from 6 different entry points under the airfield. We also conducted 3 separate helicopter extractions of 3 distinct groups of civilians, including at least 185 American citizens, and with our German partners, 21 German citizens. Additionally, U.S. Special Operations Forces reached out to help bring in more than 1,064 American citizens and 2,017 SIVs, or Afghans at risk, and 127 third country nationals, all via phone calls, vectors, and escorting. We have evacuated more than 6,000 U.S. civilians, which we believe represents the vast majority of those who wanted to leave at this time. It would be difficult to overestimate the number of unusual challenges and competing demands that our forces on the ground have successfully overcome. The threat to our forces, particularly from ISIS-K, was very real and tragically resulted in the loss of 13 service members and dozens of Afghan civilians. I've said this before, but I'd like to say it again. We greatly appreciate the contributions of the many coalition partners that stood with us on the ground at Karzai International Airport. I'm just going to single out one nation as an example of the many: the Norwegians, who maintained their hospital at the airport and who were absolutely critical for the immediate care of our wounded after the Abbey Gate attack. Even after the attack, they agreed to extend the presence of their hospital to provide more coverage for us. Our diplomats have also been with us in Kabul from the beginning, and their work in processing over 120,000 people stands right beside that of their military partners. We were a team on the ground. As I close my remarks, I would like to offer my personal appreciation to the more than 800,000 service members and 25,000 civilians who have served in Afghanistan, and particularly to the families of those whose loved ones have been lost or wounded. Your service, as well as that of your comrades and family members, will never be forgotten. My heart is broken over the losses we sustained 3 days ago. As the poem by Lawrence Benyon goes, we will remember them. The last 18 days have been challenging. Americans can be proud of the men and women of the armed forces who met these challenges head on. I'm now ready to take your questions.
Thank you, General. We'll start with the lead at AP. I would ask you to, because we're limited on time, to please limit your follow-up so that more people can get questions asked. Go ahead, Lita.
General, thanks for doing this. It's Lita with AP. Can you give us a sense of whether or not there were any American citizens or other civilians who were taken out on any of those last couple of C-17s that flew out this afternoon? And can you give us a picture of what you saw with equipment and other things getting either destroyed or removed at the airport before they left?
Lita, so no American citizens came out on the last, what we call the joint tactical exfiltration, the last 5 jets to leave. We maintained the ability to bring them in up until immediately before departure, but we were not able to bring any Americans out. That activity ended probably about 12 hours before our exit, although we continued the outreach and would have been prepared to bring them on until the very last minute, but none of them made it to the airport and were able to be accommodated. We brought some of it out and we demilitarized some of it. Let me give you an example of something that we demilitarized. You're very much aware, of course, of the rocket attack that occurred yesterday, where 5 rockets were fired at the airfield. Our CRAMs were very effective in engaging the 2 rockets that did fall on the airfield, and we believe they probably kept them from doing more significant damage. We elected to keep those systems in operation up until the very last minute. It's a complex procedure, complex and time-intensive procedure to break down those systems. So we demilitarized those systems so that they'll never be used again. And it was just we felt it was more important to protect our forces than to bring those systems back. We have also demilitarized equipment that we did not bring out of the airport that included a number of MRAPs, up to 70 MRAPs that we demilitarized and will never be used again by anyone, 27 Humvees, the little tactical vehicle that will never be driven again. Additionally, on the ramp at HKIA are a total of 73 aircraft. Those aircraft will never fly again when we left. They'll never be able to be operated by anyone. Most of them were non-mission capable to begin with, but certainly they'll never be able to be flown again. Thank you.
David.
General David Martin with CBS. Was there any attempt to interfere with the final flights out, either by the Taliban or by ISIS or any other group? And at the end, did Americans just vacate the premises, or did they turn it over to the Taliban?
Oh, we know that ISIS-K has worked very, very hard to strike us and to continue to strike us. We feel that the strike we took yesterday in Kabul actually was very disruptive to their attack plans and threw them off stride. And I think that was one of the significant reasons why they were not able to organize themselves and get after us as we conducted the final withdrawal. I will tell you, the Taliban have been very pragmatic and very businesslike as we have approached this withdrawal. We did not turn it over to the Taliban. General Donahue, one of the last things he did before leaving was talk to the Taliban commander that he had been coordinating with as soon as about the time we were going to leave, just to let them know that we were leaving. But there was no discussion of turning anything over of that at all.
Jen.
General McKinsley, Jennifer Griffin from Fox News. If I could just have you reflect personally After 20 years of war, you've served there. You've now watched the last troops leave. You've lost troops in recent days. How did it feel leaving Afghanistan to the very group that you overthrew 20 years ago, the Taliban?
Well, as I sort of said in my remarks, as you know, I've been there a couple times. My son's been there a couple times. And it was I was very conflicted, actually. But I would tell you, I was pretty much focused on the task at hand. I'll have days ahead to actually think about that, but there was just so much going on in this headquarters, and we were so completely focused on getting our troops out, and in the days before getting our citizens out and vulnerable Afghans to the best of our ability, that I did not have a lot of time for reflection. I'm sure I will do that in the future, but right now I'm pretty much consumed with the operational task at hand. That's a good question, and I am going to be thinking about that in the days ahead.
Your message to Americans and Afghan allies who were left behind?
So the military phase of this operation is ended. The diplomatic sequel to that will now begin. And I believe our Department of State is going to work very hard to allow any American citizens that are left, and we think the citizens that were not brought out number in the low, very low hundreds. I believe that we're going to be able to get those people out. I think we're also going to negotiate very hard and very aggressively to get our other Afghan partners out. The military phase is over, but our desire to bring these people out remains as intense as it was before. The weapons have just shifted, if you will, from the military realm to the diplomatic realm, and the Department of State will now take the lead on that.
Nancy.
Can you clarify just a couple points? Can you tell us how many people are on that final C-17 flight? Can you tell us where that flight is headed? And you mentioned that General Donahue talked to his Taliban, essentially his counterpart. Can you give us any sense of what role the Taliban played from a security perspective to allow the U.S. to safely depart Kabul?
Yeah, so I'm not going to be able to answer the first two questions because those operations are still concluding as to where those aircraft are going and the exact disposition of our forces on the aircraft. I can tell you this, though, about what the Taliban has done. They established a firm perimeter outside of the airfield to prevent people from coming on the airfield during our departure. And we've worked that with them for a number of days. They did not have direct knowledge of our time of departure. We chose to keep that very information very restricted, but they were actually very helpful and useful to us as we closed down operations.
I want to go to the phones. I haven't done that yet. Dan Lamoth.
Hey, thanks for calling on me. General, can you give us a deeper level of detail on what this last day looked like in terms of number of flights, number of people you had on the ground to start with, who might have been on that last plane, particularly senior leaders, and kind of just how this all played out? Thanks.
Sure. So let me actually begin with the back end of your question. On the last airplane out was General Chris Donahue, the commander of the 82nd Airborne Division, and my ground force commander there. And he was accompanied by our Charge A, Ambassador Russ Wilson. So they came out together. So the state defense team came out on the last aircraft and were, in fact, the last people to stand on the ground, step on the airplane. So what has happened over the last 12 or 18 hours is, first of all, we were intent on maintaining the ability to bring out Americans and other Afghans as long as we could. So we kept that capability until just a few hours ago. And we were able to bring out some people earlier in the day, although, as I've noted earlier, we had to cut it off sometime before this operation began. But we were intent on maintaining that capability. We were also intent on maintaining our force protection because the threats from ISIS were very real, very concerning. And so we did a number of things. We had overwhelming U.S. air power overhead should there have been any challenge to our departure. And again, there was absolutely no question we were not going to be challenged by the Taliban. If we're going to be challenged, it was going to be by ISIS. And I think some of the things we've done yesterday, particularly the strike, and other things we've done have disrupted their ability to conduct that attack planning. But they remain a very lethal force, and I think we would assess that probably there are at least 2,000 hardcore ISIS fighters in Afghanistan now. And of course, many of those come from the prisons that were opened a few days ago. So that number is up and is probably as high as it's ever been in quite a while. And that's going to be a challenge for the Taliban, I believe, in the days ahead.
Idris.
Thank you, General. Two quick questions. There were about 500 Afghan soldiers who were protecting the perimeter. Did you evacuate them and their families? And secondly, just on the airport, now that you've departed, do you believe it can take on civilian aircraft pretty soon, or will it require some type of repair or expertise?
Sure. So to the best of my knowledge, which is actually pretty good, I believe we brought out all the Afghan military forces who were partnered with us to defend the airfield and their family members. I believe that has been accomplished. We need the airport to be operational, and we need the airport to be operational quickly for civilian, for civilian traffic. So we're going to do everything we can to help with that. Let me give you an example. One of the things we did not demilitarize as we left were those pieces of equipment that are necessary for airport operations, such as a fire truck, some of the front end loaders, things like that. We left that equipment. So that is available to allow that airport to get back and get operating as soon as possible. And it needs to get operating as soon as possible.
Louis?
General, today is August 30th, and the deadline had repeatedly been said that it was going to be August 31st. Do you think that there may be some people who had some false hope that they had at least one more day before this happened? And can you explain the tactical decision as to why you completed this mission on the 30th as opposed to the 31st?
Sure. So it's actually the 31st in Afghanistan. As we take a look what day of the week, what day of the month it is, it's the 30th here, 31st in Afghanistan. So we actually went out on the 31st, not the 30th, if you look at Afghan time. Look, there's a lot of heartbreak associated with this departure. We did not get everybody out that we wanted to get out. But I think if we'd stayed another 10 days, Louis, we wouldn't have gotten everybody out that we wanted to get out. And there still would have been people who would have been disappointed with that. It's a tough situation. But I want to emphasize again that simply because we have left, that doesn't mean the opportunities for both Americans that are in Afghanistan that want to leave and Afghans who want to leave, they will not be denied that opportunity. I think our Department of State is going to work that very hard in the days and weeks ahead.
Courtney?
Just one clarification, General McKenzie. It's Courtney Kirby from NBC News. So were there any evacuees left at the airport when the last U.S. military flight left?
There were no evacuees left at the airport when the U.S. last flight left, Courtney.
Thank you. And then just on the Taliban, you've talked about their pragmatic ways of operating with the U.S. military here. Do you see a role for the U.S. military to have open conversations with the Taliban, even potential coordination going forward, in particular with this growing and now accentuated threat from ISIS?
Well, I'll tell you, my dealing with the Taliban and the dealings of my commanders on the ground with the Taliban revolved around our determination to execute this operation and the very flat statement we made to them that if you challenge us, we're going to hurt you. And I think they recognize that. And for their own purposes, this is something they wanted to have happen too. I can't foresee the way future coordination between us would go. I would leave that for some future date. I will simply say that they wanted us out. We wanted to get out with our people and with our friends and partners. And so for that short period of time, our issues, our view of the world was congruent. It was the same. Finally, I do believe the Taliban's going to have their hands full with ISIS-K, and they let a lot of those people out of prisons, and now they're going to be able to reap what they sowed.
Tara.
Thank you. General McKenzie, Tara Kopp with Defense One. Can you assure the American public that every single U.S. service member is now out of Afghanistan?
Every single U.S. service member is now out of Afghanistan. I can say that with 100% certainty.
Carla?
Sir, really quickly, just to clarify, you mentioned 123,000 out of Afghanistan. Earlier this morning, we heard 122. So can we assume that that was 1,000 Afghans that came out in some of these final flights? And then I have a quick follow-up.
We brought about 1,000 Afghans, I think over 1,500 out in the last 24 hours or so. The exact number, I'm sure, is probably, that computation is probably going to change a little bit in the days ahead. I don't think it's going to change much. But yes, we brought a number of Afghans out here at the very end.
And then, sir, how would you characterize this evacuation mission? Because on the one hand, 123,000 people got out. On the other hand, of course, you lost 13 Marines. More than 100 Afghans died, and there are still potentially tens of thousands, SIVs, P1s, P2s, and others that wanted to get out that did not get out, as you said. So how would you characterize this mission?
Well, first of all, the 11 Marines, the soldier and the sailor that we lost, I will never forget that. That will be with me, and I know every other commander involved for the rest of our lives. We've all lost people before, and it's never an easy thing. You would like to bring out everybody that wanted to come out. we're not able to do that. The situation wouldn't allow it. I think we did a very good job of getting everybody that we could get out, given the unique the challenges of the tactical situation on the ground. The fact that really not all Americans wanted to leave. There are Americans that, for a variety of reasons, want to stay for a while. I think we'll go back and they'll have the opportunity to revisit that and come out if they want. I think it's just important to note that we shouldn't look on this as the end of that engagement about people in Afghanistan. I am confident that that engagement is going to continue through a variety of venues, and it won't just be the United States that's going to be engaged on this. I think our international partners are also going to be very engaged on this as well going forward.
We had two more, I'm afraid. We'll go to the phones again. Jack Detch.
Thanks, General McKenzie. I'm kind of curious just how American citizens are going to be expected to get to the airport and what the continuing terror threat will be just in the coming days, and what the evacuation picture is going to look like for them.
So I think that the terror threat is going to be very high, and I don't want to minimize that. But I think what we'll do is we will work with the Taliban and work with the next government of Afghanistan, whatever its characterization is going to be, in order to ensure that our citizens are protected and that they have an opportunity to leave. As you know, we still hold a variety of significant leverage over whatever future government exists in Kabul, and I have no doubt that the Department of State will fully exercise that leverage.
Okay. Do you have any confidence in their ability to secure the city right now, the Taliban?
I think they're going to be challenged to secure the city. I do know this, just speaking purely practically as a professional, they helped us secure the airfield. Not perfectly, but they gave it a very good effort, and it was actually significantly helpful to us, particularly here at the end.
Last question for today, Megan.
Are there any U.S. Sorry, this is Megan Myers at Military Times. Are there any U.S. aircraft still doing overflights of Afghanistan, either Kabul or otherwise, looking out for potential threats?
So as we have said for quite a while, we always reserve the opportunity to go after, in the CT realm, the counterterrorism realm, Al-Qaeda and ISIS when those targets present themselves. So we will always retain the ability to do that.
Okay, that's about all the time we have. General, any concluding thoughts you might want to add?
John, it's been a long day, and much longer actually for our forces that are coming out. The operation's gone smoothly so far, and I just look forward to recovering the force completely, getting everybody home.
Thank you, General. Thanks for your time. Thank you all. Have a nice afternoon.
Okay, I'll go out there and send it to him, then I'm going to go to his office. Do you mind like 16 minutes? Yeah, this is fine. Thanks. Yeah, I'll go with the
Yeah.
You all took our feet the head on.
Yeah, yeah.
You would have control of the shot.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm throwing it out as an idea to mix the two. The only thing I would say is that I think networks would be very uncomfortable sending someone over on a piece of equipment they've never used before. In theory, it's really easy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They always say that, like, well, here, here, and this is kind of like, hey, we're both doing the exact same.
Yeah.
But yet, if they're relinquishing control.
Exactly right.
I just throwing it out as, hey, that might actually be a cool thing.
Yeah.
Because then it'd be like, look, you know, you practice until you're happy and you know, it'd be like, this might be
That's totally possible. I'll throw it at some people when I go back. And never know.
I mean, not that it's to say, but I'm just thinking all of a sudden as I'm sitting at the window and it's like, wow, and he was reading up a little bit, it looks so bad. It's trying to make something function, but
sure.
You never get it perfect.
No,
that's why I'm sort of like, hey, look, it doesn't matter if you're running or not, if you're really just want to get some shots.
Yeah.
You got to go do it, and everybody's got to do the same thing.
The thing is that a lot of times, you gotta be careful because the networks will take this shot out and know nothing's happening.
Oh, I know.
They got a bob or a tease, or they like, we're expecting you to hear from somebody, and they show an empty shot, so.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You gotta be careful on moving around too much.